Before you go any further, make sure you subscribe, hit like, and tell me in the comment what you think really hides behind those prison walls, because tonight's story goes deeper than most people are ready for. The sirens were still echoing across the Mississippi River when the body was found. It was just before dawn outside the Louisiana State Penitentiary, better known to the world as Angola Prison. The prison sits on 18,000 acres of former plantation land, wrapped in razor wire and swamp, a fortress isolated by miles of farmland and riverbank. Locals call it the farm. Inmates call it something else. They call it the wall. At 5:12 a.m., a corrections officer on perimeter patrol spotted something tangled in the chain-link fence along the northern boundary, near the stretch inmates avoid even during yard time. What he saw at first looked like discarded clothing. It wasn't. The man hanging against the fence was identified as Marcus Reed, inmate number 447921, serving a 25-year sentence for armed robbery. His jumpsuit was torn. His hands were scraped raw and carved into the concrete base beneath the fence, barely visible in the gray light, were 3 words scratched in with something sharp. Don't face it. Detective Elena Boudreau arrived 27 minutes later. She had worked homicide in Baton Rouge for over a decade, but Angola cases were different. They moved slower, quieter, as if the prison itself swallowed noise. She stepped out of her unmarked car and looked up at the watchtowers. Guards stared down, unreadable. Escape attempt? She asked Warden Paul Timmons, who stood with his hands folded behind his back. Timmons shook his head once. No alarms. No breach fence. He never got over. Marcus Reed hadn't escaped. He had run toward something and died before he reached it. Inside the infirmary, the prison doctor confirmed blunt force trauma to the back of the head. Not consistent with a fall. Not self-inflicted. There were defensive wounds on his forearms. Someone had chased him. Someone had struck him. But here was a problem. At 4:47 a.m., Marcus Reed was recorded on security cameras walking alone from cell block D toward the outer yard. No one followed. No one appeared behind him in any footage. Angola has cameras everywhere. Steel corridors, narrow walkways, concrete corners. Yet from the moment Marcus stepped beyond the yard's floodlights toward the northern perimeter, the feed glitched for exactly 4 minutes. 4 minutes. When the image returned, he was already against the fence. Dead. Detective Boudreau requested access to the yard logs. The northern perimeter bordered an old concrete barrier, an aging interior wall that once separated work crews decades ago. It had long since fallen out of use, left standing like a relic of another era. Inmates weren't assigned there. Inmates avoided it. Why? Boudreau asked Captain Raymond Ellis, head of internal security. Ellis hesitated. It's just prison folklore. The older guys tell stories. They say men who mess with a wall end up broken. That's not an answer. Ellis lowered his voice. 3 assaults in that corner over the last 5 years. 2 suicides. 1 inmate beaten so badly he can't speak properly anymore. No cameras pointed directly at that stretch. It's a blind spot. A blind spot in a maximum security prison. Boudreau asked. Ellis didn't respond. Later that afternoon, she requested to speak with Reed's cellmate, Calvin Red Donahue. Red was serving life for second-degree murder. Broad shoulders, calm eyes, a man who had survived Angola for 15 years. He didn't look surprised to see her. Marcus was scared, Red said quietly. Been scared for weeks. Of what? Red stared at the steel table between them. He kept saying someone wanted him to face the wall. Boudreau leaned forward. What does that mean? Red's jaw tightened. It means he saw something he shouldn't have. Like what? Red hesitated. Then, you know how prison runs on power? Not just guards. Inmates, too. There are sections controlled by certain crews. Marcus did laundry detail. Night shifts. He handled uniforms. Guard uniforms. Boudreau's pen paused. 2 weeks ago, Red continued, Marcus comes back to the cell shaking. Said he found blood inside a corrections jacket. Fresh. Not from an inmate. From a guard. Did he report it? Red gave a bitter smile. Reported to who? According to personnel logs, no guards had reported injuries matching blood loss. No incident reports filed. But Boudreaux wasn't convinced this was about a stained jacket. "What happened the night he died?" she asked. Red's breathing grew shallow. "He got a note. Slid under our cell door." "From who?" "No name." "What did it say?" Red swallowed. It said, 4:30 a.m. North Yard. Come alone. Face it. "Did he show you the note?" Red shook his head. "He burned it in the sink." "Why didn't you stop him?" Red's eyes flicked up. There was fear there. Real fear. "You don't understand," he said softly. "Nobody refuses when it comes from the wall." By evening, Boudreaux was reviewing footage again, frame by frame. She zoomed in on Marcus's final walk. Something caught her attention this time, not behind him, but above. In the reflection of a narrow security mirror mounted near the yard entrance, there was a flicker, a shadow moving across the upper catwalk. She froze the frame. The catwalk was restricted. Access required a key card. Only guards could enter. She requested the access logs for the upper north catwalk between 4 o'clock and 5 a.m. There was one entry, 4:28 a.m. Officer Daniel Crow. Crow had been with Angola for 6 years. No disciplinary history. Solid performance reviews. At 4:52 a.m., Crow logged out of the catwalk. 4 minutes before Marcus Reed was found at the fence. When questioned, Crow remained composed. "I was checking structural rust near the upper railing," he said. "Routine inspection." At 4:30 in the morning, Boudreaux asked, "It's cooler before sunrise. Did you see Marcus Reed in the yard?" "No." "Did you speak to him?" "No." "Did you leave your post during the camera blackout?" Crow's expression didn't change. "What blackout?" The IT report confirmed a temporary signal interruption affecting only the northern yard cameras. Cause undetermined. Boudreaux walked the perimeter herself before sunset. The wall loomed ahead, thick, aged concrete stretching along the forgotten corner of the yard. Faded stains marked its surface. Scratches. Names carved into the stone. She ran her fingers along the rough edge and found something else etched near the base. 3 sets of initials. Emma. Underneath it, faint but unmistakable, another message. They watched from above. Boudreaux stepped back and looked up toward the catwalk. From that angle, the wall created a natural funnel. Anyone standing above could see clearly down to the corner below, while remaining invisible from most yard cameras. A perfect vantage point. She requested a forensic sweep of the catwalk. At 9:17 p.m., the lab technician called her directly. They had found something wedged between the metal grating and the railing. A small object. A prison-issued key card. Not Officer Crow's. It belonged to Captain Raymond Ellis, head of internal security. And according to digital logs, Ellis's card had never accessed the catwalk that morning. Officially, he was nowhere near the wall. But the key card said otherwise. And when Boudreaux asked for Ellis's location between 4 o'clock and 5 a.m., she was told his body camera footage for that hour was corrupted. 2 corrupted systems. 1 dead inmate. 1 blind spot. As Boudreaux stood alone in her office that night, staring at the evidence photos, she realized something chilling. Marcus Reed hadn't been trying to escape. He had been summoned, and someone with authority inside Angola had made sure the cameras went dark. But when the forensic team processed Reed's fingernails, they found skin cells that didn't match any inmate in cell block D. They matched someone in the corrections database. Someone assigned to oversee the northern yard. The DNA came back at 11:43 p.m. It wasn't Officer Crow. It wasn't Captain Ellis. It belonged to a guard who had officially resigned 2 weeks earlier, after filing a sealed internal complaint about activities near the wall. A guard who, according to state records, had left Angola alive. But when detectives went to notify him about the DNA match, they discovered he had been reported missing for 13 days, and no one inside the prison had said a word. The missing guard's name was Thomas Avery, 32 years old, former Army reservist, transferred to Angola 3 years earlier. Clean record, no prior complaints, until the one he filed 2 weeks before he vanished. Detective Elena Boudreaux stood in Avery's small Baton Rouge apartment just after sunrise. The blinds were drawn. His truck was still in the parking lot. Inside, nothing looked ransacked. A coffee mug sat on the kitchen counter, dried rings marking where it had been left too long. His wallet and spare keys were neatly placed in a ceramic bowl by the door. People planning to disappear don't leave their wallets behind. On the dining table sat a single manila envelope addressed to the Louisiana Department of Public Safety. It had been opened, resealed, and opened again. Inside was a carbon copy of his internal complaint. Subject: unauthorized activity and coercion of inmates, North Yard perimeter. The report was vague, but one paragraph stood out. Certain supervisory staff are using inmate labor to conceal violent disciplinary actions outside documented channels. The area referred to by inmates as the wall is being used to conduct off-record punishments. Boudreaux read the line twice. Off-record punishments. She called the warden immediately. Why wasn't this escalated? She asked Warden Paul Timmons. Timmons sounded strained. Internal complaints are reviewed by administrative board. Avery resigned before any formal hearing. He didn't resign, Boudreaux said flatly. He disappeared. Silence stretched across the line. Back at Angola, tension hung in the corridors like humidity. Word had spread about the detective digging into the wall. Inmates watched her pass with unreadable expressions. Guards avoided prolonged eye contact. Captain Raymond Ellis remained composed during questioning. "I never stepped foot on that catwalk the morning Reed died," he said. "My key card must have been cloned or stolen." "Cloned?" Boudreaux asked. "Inside a maximum security prison." Ellis didn't flinch. "You'd be surprised what inmates can manufacture." She wasn't, but inmates didn't have access to administrative-grade keycard encryption. She shifted strategy. "Tell me about Thomas Avery." Ellis's jaw tightened for the first time. Young guy. Thought he could change the system. Started asking questions he didn't understand. Questions about what? Discipline. Angola isn't a county jail. It's 18,000 acres with violent offenders. Sometimes you have to show strength. "Off the record," she pressed. Ellis leaned forward. "You're chasing ghosts, detective. Reed was an inmate with enemies. Avery probably got spooked and ran." Boudreaux left the room unconvinced. Forensics completed a deeper sweep of the North Catwalk that afternoon. Beneath a loose section of grating, they discovered something else. Tiny flecks of dried blood lodged in the metal grooves. The DNA matched Thomas Avery. He hadn't just been near the wall. He had bled there. That changed everything. Boudreaux secured a warrant to pull archive camera backups from the night 2 weeks earlier, the last night Avery was seen on duty. The official footage showed him clocking out at 10:03 p.m. calm. Alone, but the backup server told a different story. At 9:41 p.m., Avery's body camera activated briefly inside a restricted corridor leading to the North Yard. The footage was shaky, partially obscured, but audio was clear. Avery's voice, tense. "This isn't protocol. We can't just drag him out there." Another voice responded. "Low. Controlled. You want to keep your job. You look away." The video cut abruptly. Boudreaux replayed the audio over and over. The second voice was distorted, but she recognized the cadence. The measured authority. "Captain Ellis." Before she could act on it, another call came in. An inmate from cell block F had been found unconscious near the showers. Severe head trauma. He was alive, but barely. His name was Julian Cortez. According to records, Cortez had been assigned to the North Yard work crew the same week Avery filed his complaint. At the hospital wing, Cortez drifted in and out of consciousness. Boudreaux managed to speak with him briefly before doctors pushed her aside. They said, "Face the wall." He whispered, lips trembling. "They make you kneel. Hands on concrete. Cameras go dark." "Who makes you?" she asked urgently. Cortez's eyes flicked toward the door. Fear overtook his expression. "The ones above." Then he passed out. Hours later, prison IT reported another technical malfunction. The digital archive containing Avery's body cam clip had been corrupted, but Boudreaux already had a copy. That evening, she confronted Warden Timmons privately. "You have a rogue operation inside your prison," she said. "Guards are using a blind spot to assault inmates." Timmons looked older than he had that morning. "You don't understand Angola's history." "Then help me." He hesitated before speaking. The wall predates most of the current staff. Decades ago, it was used for field discipline. Before oversight committees, before body cameras, some traditions never fully died. Traditions, she repeated. A culture of silence, he corrected quietly. The break in the case came unexpectedly. A junior corrections officer named Leah Morgan requested to speak off record. She looked terrified. I saw Captain Ellis on the North Catwalk the night Avery disappeared, she said. He wasn't alone. Who was with him? She swallowed. Officer Crow. Boudreaux felt the pieces shifting. What were they doing? Morgan's hands trembled. There was someone on their knees at the wall. I thought it was an inmate, but then I saw the boots. They weren't state-issued. Not an inmate. A guard. Thomas Avery. Morgan had stayed silent out of fear. Until now. Why come forward? Boudreaux asked. Because they're cleaning house, Morgan whispered. Anyone who talks gets transferred. Always. As if to prove her point, Officer Daniel Crow failed to report for his next shift. His house was empty. His phone disconnected. By midnight, an APB had been issued statewide. But Boudreaux wasn't convinced Crow was running. She returned to the north yard alone under floodlights, staring at the concrete expanse of the wall. She traced the etched initials again, MR for Marcus Reed. Below it, fresh scratches she hadn't noticed before. TA, Thomas Avery. They hadn't erased his mark. Maybe they hadn't seen it. Or maybe it was meant as a warning. At 1:12 a.m., her phone buzzed. A patrol unit had located Officer Crow's car parked near Levy Road less than 3 miles from Angola. Engine cold. Doors unlocked. Inside the vehicle, in the passenger seat, lay Crow's badge. On the dashboard, written in condensation, were 2 words traced by a fingertip. Not me. Search teams combed the riverbank until dawn. They found footprints leading toward the water. But no body. By morning, news outlets had begun circling the story. Inmate dead, missing guard, corruption rumors inside one of America's most notorious prisons. Pressure mounted. The governor's office called for immediate answers. And that's when the final forensic report arrived. The skin cells under Marcus Reed's fingernails, the ones originally matching Thomas Avery, contained a secondary DNA profile. A partial match. Not to Crow, not to Ellis, but to someone with clearance above them both. Someone whose name had not yet appeared in any report. When Boudreaux saw the identification, her breath caught, because the DNA belonged to a man who technically didn't work inside the prison walls at all. A private contractor, security oversight, assigned to audit Angola's internal operations, and scheduled to arrive again in 48 hours, which meant whoever was orchestrating what happened at the wall wasn't just covering up violence. They were preparing for inspection, and if they were willing to silence inmates and guards alike, there was no telling who would be next. The private contractor's name was Richard Halpern. On paper, he wasn't a prison employee. He worked for a security compliance firm hired by the state to ensure operational transparency at Angola. His badge granted him access almost everywhere: administrative offices, control rooms, catwalks, even the North Yard perimeter. Detective Elena Boudreaux requested his full audit schedule. Halpern had visited Angola 3 times in the past 6 months. Each visit coincided with internal disciplinary reviews. Each time, a cluster of inmate assault reports quietly disappeared from the system within days. And 2 weeks ago, on the night Thomas Avery vanished, Halpern had signed into the prison at 8:57 p.m. He never signed out. Official records claimed he left at 10:15 p.m., but the exit camera footage for that hour was corrupted. Another blackout. Boudreaux arranged to intercept Halpern when he returned for his scheduled inspection. He arrived in a dark SUV just after noon, polished shoes, stepping onto Angola's gravel lot as if he were visiting a corporate campus instead of a maximum security penitentiary. Mid-40s, calm eyes, controlled smile. Detective, he said smoothly when introduced. I hear you've taken an interest in our facility. More in what's happening behind it, she replied. Halpern didn't flinch. Inside the administrative office, she laid out the evidence in deliberate silence. Marcus Reed's autopsy photos, the catwalk blood match to Thomas Avery, the body cam audio, the partial DNA linking Halpern to Reed's final struggle. Halpern studied each image with unsettling detachment. "You're implying I assaulted an inmate?" he asked evenly. "I'm stating your DNA was under his fingernails." "That's impossible." "Is it?" He folded his hands. "Detective, I conduct close contact inspections, physical searches of contraband areas. I interact with inmates daily. Cross-contamination happens." "Not like this," she said. "He fought someone at the wall." Halpern's expression remained neutral, but a muscle in his jaw twitched. "You think I'd risk everything over a convicted felon?" he asked. "I think," Boudreaux replied, "you are protecting something bigger." Silence settled between them. The turning point came not from Halpern, but from Warden Paul Timmons. That evening, Timmons requested a private meeting with Boudreaux in the empty chapel on prison grounds. The wooden pews creaked as he sat, shoulders slumped. "It started years ago," he said quietly. "Budget cuts, staff shortages, violence spiking, oversight committees demanding lower incident reports." "And," she pressed, "and Halpern proposed a solution. Keep official reports clean. Handle certain disciplinary matters internally. No paperwork. No headlines." "At the wall." Timmons nodded. "Ellis enforced it. Crow assisted. Avery found out and threatened to go public." "So you let them silence him?" Timmons closed his eyes. "I told myself it was about stability, about preventing riots, but it became something else." "Control," Boudreaux said. "Yes." According to Timmons, the wall had become an unofficial punishment site. Inmates suspected of organizing gangs, smuggling contraband, or challenging authority were taken there under the cover of camera outages, forced to kneel, intimidated, beaten just enough to send a message, but not enough to require hospital reports. Marcus Reed hadn't been targeted at random. He had discovered blood inside a guard's uniform because that blood belonged to Thomas Avery. Avery hadn't resigned. He had been dragged to the wall after confronting Ellis and Halpern. Crow, tasked with assisting, had hesitated, and hesitation in that culture was weakness. When Marcus received a note summoning him to the North Yard, it wasn't to punish him, it was to test him. Halpern believed Marcus had told someone about the uniform. They intended to scare him into silence. But Marcus fought back, harder than they expected. In the struggle, he scratched Halpern, and someone, likely Ellis, struck him fatally from behind. Crow saw it happen. That was why his badge had been left in the car. Not me. He hadn't killed Marcus, but he had witnessed it, and now he was missing. Before Boudreaux could secure arrest warrants, the case detonated publicly. A local journalist obtained leaked audio of Avery's body cam and aired it during primetime news. National outlets picked up the story within hours. Off-the-record punishments at America's largest maximum security prison became the headline splashed across screens from New York to London. Federal investigators descended on Angola. Halpern attempted to leave the state that night. He was arrested at Louis Armstrong International Airport. Captain Raymond Ellis was taken into custody at his home. Warden Timmons resigned. But Daniel Crow was still nowhere to be found. For 3 days, search teams combed the levees and swamps near the Mississippi River. On the 4th morning, a fisherman reported body snagged and reed along the riverbank. It was Crow. Cause of death, blunt force trauma. Not drowning. Time of death, within 24 hours of Marcus Reed, which meant Crow hadn't run. He had been eliminated. Someone feared what he might confess. Halpern denied everything during interrogation. Claimed Crow must have panicked. Claimed Ellis acted independently. Claimed Avery's death was an accident during a scuffle. But the forensic timeline contradicted him. Crow's injuries were consistent with being struck from behind, just like Marcus. The same angle, the same force pattern. When confronted with that analysis, Halpern finally lost his composure. "You don't understand what prisons are," he snapped. "You sit in offices and talk about reform. We deal with predators." "And you became one," Boudreaux replied coldly. In the months that followed, indictments were handed down. Federal charges, civil rights violations, obstruction of justice, manslaughter. Families of inmates filed lawsuits. Oversight committees were restructured. The North Yard cameras were upgraded, blind spots eliminated, and the wall, once a symbol of fear, was demolished. Concrete cracked under hydraulic hammers, dust rising into the Louisiana sky. But as the rubble was cleared, workers uncovered something no one expected. Embedded deep within the foundation were dozens of small etchings, initials carved into the concrete over decades. Names of inmates long transferred. Some deceased, some still serving life sentences. Proof that the wall's history stretched back further than anyone admitted. Marcus Reed's initials were there. So were Thomas Avery's. But beneath the lowest layer of concrete, etched faintly and almost erased by time, was another message. They said it was over. Detective Boudreaux stood at the site long after crews packed up. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows where the wall once stood. Halpern and Ellis were behind bars awaiting trial. Timmons faced federal inquiry. Yet one question lingered. The night Marcus died, 2 key card logs had been altered. Halpern's and someone else's. An administrator with clearance higher than Halpern. A name buried deep in the state corrections hierarchy. The alteration had been subtle, seconds shifted, timestamps nudged. Too precise for coincidence, too careful for panic, which meant someone above Halpern had helped cover it up. And that person was still employed, still watching. 3 months later, Angola reported another incident in a different yard. Officially, it was labeled an inmate altercation. But the injuries mirrored the same pattern. Blunt force trauma from behind. No camera footage available. Temporary system outage. Different location. Same silence. They thought tearing down the wall would end the fear. But fear doesn't live in concrete. It lives in people. And as long as power can hide in blind spots, there will always be another wall somewhere in the dark. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for what comes next. Make sure you're subscribed, because some truths don't stay buried for long.